a terrorist incident here, and I believe that something has happened that has caused these planes to be taken or be commandeered.
We all shared in that hope, Bill, in the early going. In fact, one of our early guests from the former National Transportation Safety Board investigator was saying, hey, this could have been a pilot who was temporarily disoriented, maybe blinded by the morning sun. It has happened before. A skyscraper, the Empire State Building, was hit back in 1945 by an Army bomber, but that was in the fog. This was on a bright, clear morning, and when we saw that second plane slam into the second tower intentionally, quite clearly, you got to believe this is a terrorist attack. It doesn't seem like there would be two suicidal pilots out there who just wanted to, fly their planes into these buildings for whatever reason a suicidal person might want to do that. Harvey Kushner is on the line with us. He's a frequent guest of ours and a terrorism expert. Harvey, is it too early to speculate about suspects? I don't want to bring up memories of the Oklahoma City bombing when people were talking about Middle Eastern terrorists.
Yeah, obviously it's too early to bring that up. Who might be responsible if, in fact, it is terrorism? I mean, look, John, I couldn't conjure up a story like this. I couldn't. If I wrote a script like this with two planes, I believe there were two, will go into the Trade Center on a clear day like this, somebody laugh at me and say this is beyond bizarre. So one thinks only that this could be the most horrifically planned incident, in the annals of terrorism against the United States. Think about it. I mean, you look outside the Fox studios, look how clear it is. I mean, how could you miss the trade towers? We're talking about terrorism. No matter how this turns out, this is going to be a day that's going to live in infamy. And, it's going to cause changes in terms of, if it turns out to terrorism, in terms of security like this country has never seen before. And if it just happens to be an accident, it's going to change FAA and NTSB and the whole airline industry and flight patterns over New York, especially if it's a small craft involved or if it's a 737.
I think it's way beyond calling this an accident at this point, Harvey. But
well, I'm trying to be incendiary.
Right.
I recall. I'm old enough, unfortunately, to recall incidents in which people from Middle Eastern descent were blamed for the Oklahoma City right up front. You remember that?
Right, I do.
And certainly,
and we want
the
to stay away
panic
from that,
which occurred with TWA 800 as well.
Right.
But to me, as I said to you, I couldn't conjure up a story like this, John, and I'm sure you've covered news throughout the world. This is something that is just...
This is absolutely
It's literally
horrific.
Put goosebumps. For a terrorism guy like myself, it's put goosebumps on my body.
When we come back, the focus shifts to Washington, where the military building that protects the free world is under siege. This Fox News special, As It Happened, continues in a moment.
We heard a very loud blast, an explosion. We looked up, and the building literally began to collapse before us. There was debris falling, I'd say at least 3/4 the height of the building. People within the entire perimeter began literally, including myself, which is why I'm out of breath, to run for our lives. And I am now standing in a black cloud of smoke left over from the debris. There's soot. It's difficult to breathe. People ran into nearby office buildings once they got out of the danger zone just to be able to breathe. I'm on a payphone on the street right now, and I literally cannot see more than a quarter block away.
Welcome back to As It Happened, Day of Terror, September the 11th, 2001. I'm Shepard Smith atop Fox News headquarters in New York with a bird's eye view of Lower Manhattan and what was the World Trade Center, where now America digs its dead and wounded from the rubble below, happening here and in Washington. This skyline left with a massive hole, while the country is left with a sense of vulnerability. By 9:30 a.m. on September the 11th, we were a nation under siege.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
Clearly a shaken President Bush, jettisoning what were intended to be his remarks on education. Perhaps a little more education worldwide would prevent this kind of thing in the future, but we are going to be looking at an enormous death toll. 50,000 people work in those two buildings. They have been slammed into by airplanes. You're looking at the footage of one of the planes coming in earlier. This is the second plane, a jet aircraft, hitting the World Trade Center about 2 minutes after 9, perhaps 5 minutes after 9 this morning. Rita Cosby is on the phone with us, and Rita, I understand you have a lot of new information.
Yeah, John, I have just been told from a U.S. law enforcement official that they're saying it is evident that this is a terrorist-related attack, and among the key targets, key people that they're looking at is Osama bin Laden. It was just last Friday that the U.S. State Department put out a worldwide caution to American citizens traveling abroad and also to U.S. government facilities, and they said that terrorism knows no limits, whether it's on U.S. soil or outside. So they're certainly looking at that as a possibility. What I'm also hearing from my officials at FAA, at the Federal Aviation Administration, is that they believe the first plane may have been an American Airlines plane, a commercial jet, either a 737 or 757, and that it was a hijacked plane. This is what they believe. They're still trying to get this verified, but they did get some reports that there was an American Airlines plane that was hijacked en route from Boston to Los Angeles this morning. And they're saying that there is a strong possibility that that first plane that crashed into one of the towers, which does appear to be commercial, and looking at the video, they're saying appears to be either a 737 or 757, that apparently might have been the hijacked plane. In terms of what the second plane is, they said that does appear, as you've been reporting, John, to be a jet plane, probably a 737, twin-engine jet airplane. And those are the two things that are being looked at. They said at this point, there was no direct threat that they were aware of as any specific threat in terms of targeting the Twin Towers there in New York, but that they did have specific threats against Americans and American facilities around the world, and that's why they issued that worldwide caution. We also know that the FBI Rapid Response Team has been deployed. It is en route. Several FBI agents are already on the scene there at the Twin Towers, but they are definitely looking at this as a terrorist-related act, looking at this point not knowing who is behind it, but looking at the strong possibility that it may be Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the East African embassy bombings several years ago.
All right, Rita Cosby, thanks very much. I want to bring into the conversation William Daly. Bill, I know that Osama bin Laden likes airplanes, and again, we are not attributing this act to his organization, but he was implicated in a plot to blow up something like 13 airliners in 13 days, or 8 in 8 days, that back in the Philippines back in the 1980s, I believe.
Exactly.
Airplanes have been his terrorist weapon of choice in the past.
They have, because they hold for someone like a bin Laden or other terrorists. The fact that you could take a plane and within just the number of people on the plane commit such a horrendous act at one time makes an impact to the world. Combine that with what we see in front of our eyes today at the World Trade Center, and you certainly conjure up the worst possible scenario that certainly law enforcement could think of what a terrorist might do.
The most terrible and heartrending thing about this is about 15 minutes ago, bodies started dropping from the top floors of the tower closest to the highway, about at least 5 or 6, and it was absolutely terrible. Obviously, they had two choices: to be burned in flames or to leap and end it all. It was quite tragic.
I guess you just heard the explosions. You didn't get a chance to see the planes involved.
No, I did not, but I looked up immediately afterwards, and of course the flames were everywhere. There's an enormous jagged hole in the first tower. The second hole in the second tower is much less extensive and much less dramatic, but there's flames out of that too. And of course there are flames burning in the parking lot across the street from the World Trade Center because of debris that has fallen down. And of course there's complete pandemonium here. And every building in the neighborhood is being evacuated or has been evacuated.
All of Manhattan has been sealed off. This is probably unprecedented. Of course, all of this is unprecedented in this dastardly occasion. But Manhattan has been sealed off. The Hudson River bridges and the tunnels have been sealed. Clearly, there is an attempt right now to thwart any further act of terrorism, act of violence against the people of Manhattan. So Manhattan is in a lockdown. We've heard that phrase used in school shootings. We've heard that phrase used in jailbreaks. I can't recall ever having that phrase used with regard to a city the size of Manhattan. But Manhattan is in a lockdown. It is sealed off. The Hudson River bridges, the tunnels, the east side, the west side, the north, the south. Of course, we are an island here in Manhattan, has been sealed off. One can only guess that the U.S. Armed Forces is now in a state of high alert to prevent any planes or any other vehicular traffic in the air from impacting anywhere in Manhattan on civilian targets. We are a city under siege right now, and the United States of America is warding off any further terrorist threats on the city of Manhattan.
Straight ahead as the timeline unfolds, President Bush the target of the suicide attackers that failed attempt. Coming up. How the attack on America happened. Fox News has now learned from presidential aides that the president and the White House were both targets here, and that by 9:48 a.m. Eastern Time, the White House and the Capitol were evacuated.
The White House is being evacuated. That comes to us from one of our Fox producers in Washington. The White House is being evacuated, the Pentagon as well. It should be noted that there are sharpshooters on the roof of the White House who have anti-aircraft missiles for just this kind of situation, but the White House is being evacuated. Now, you know that President Bush is not there. He is at this moment in Florida, perhaps boarding Air Force One to prepare to return to the nation's capital. David Asman is joining us from Fox Central. David, what do you have?
John, we are hearing right now of another explosion that has taken place at the Pentagon. We have the heart of the financial district of America being attacked. Now we understand that there is an explosion, there has been an explosion in the Pentagon, the heart of the military command center of the United States of America, John. It can't get much worse than this, let's hope.
Brian Wilson, our Washington correspondent, is on Capitol Hill. Brian, what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that there was no increased security around the Capitol as I made my way into the building, but in the last few minutes we have seen a great deal of action around the city. There is smoke just across the river from the White House, not that far. And as you know, in the last few minutes, there are reports that the Pentagon has been evacuated and the White House is being evacuated. Clearly, you're seeing now these pictures from Washington, D.C. as we try to determine exactly what has happened there, but there was an early report of a plane perhaps going down in that area. These are early reports, and we are still struggling to confirm the information, but we can tell you that they're taking things very seriously in Washington in that they are apparently evacuating the White House and the Pentagon. Here at Capitol Hill, Laura Bush is now speaking with Ted Kennedy. A hearing that was scheduled for her to appear at has been canceled. We would be watching very carefully to see whether she is also asked to leave the Capitol and go to a safe place.
Yeah, Brian Wilson, the Capitol is being evacuated, we're told, and clearly that shot that we have on our screen now, this is the Pentagon just across the river from Washington, D.C. You got to believe that it has happened again. Another large airliner, perhaps hijacked, perhaps part of some widespread plan, apparently slamming into at least the area around the Pentagon, along with the World Trade Center in Manhattan, the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in Manhattan. The Sears Tower in Chicago is being evacuated. Clearly, authorities all over the country are trying to be prudent in this unbelievable catastrophe. 2 towers of the World Trade Center, 50,000 people who work in those buildings on fire, the fire out of control. Firefighters are going to take days, perhaps, to get some Twin Towers on fire as after being slammed into by 2 jetliners earlier this morning. Let's go to David Asman in Fox Central. David?
John, as we've mentioned before, our job right now, the job of the armed forces of the United States, is to prevent any further terrorist attack. As a result of that, not only is the city of New York in a lockdown status, all entrances to New York have been closed, all airports nationwide have been closed, but indeed the White House has been evacuated, the Pentagon, of course, having been struck by some terrorist act. We're not sure whether it was an aircraft, what kind of an aircraft, but clearly the devastation is visible on the right hand of your screen. The Pentagon is in flames, is engulfed in smoke, as is the World Trade Centers. The Sears Tower in Chicago has been evacuated. Again, no specific information about whether there was a threatened attack on that, but no one is taking chances at the moment. The White House has been threatened as well. This is a shot earlier of that second attack. You see that jet aircraft bursting into flames as it crashes into the World Trade Center within 20 minutes of the other Trade Center tower having been attacked as well. Once again, the nation, as we speak, is under lockdown. Our armed forces are taking all necessary precautions to prevent another attack. Those include closing all United States airports as a result of this attack, as you see there, one that occurred about an hour ago, and an attack in the Pentagon as well. We are a nation under lockdown, and once again, we are prepared for the worst, but we are prepared. John?
We are looking at live pictures of the World Trade Center literally starting to crumble. It is falling apart as we watch these pictures live. The World Trade Center, 110 stories, literally starting to fall.
When we come back, the unthinkable happens. The second tower collapses. The death toll rises. Leaders call for calm. The thousands and expected to rise. The South Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed just about 10:05 p.m. Eastern Time. The worst was clearly over. Or was it? Our correspondents were there bringing us the latest as it unfolded, and at the same time, risking their own lives.
David Lee, what can you tell us?
John, the scene is horrific. One of the two towers literally collapsed. I was making my way to the foot of the World Trade Center. Suddenly, while talking to an officer who was questioning me about my press credentials, we heard a very loud blast, an explosion. We looked up, and the building literally began to collapse before us. There was debris falling, I'd say at least 3/4 the height of the building. People within the entire perimeter began literally, including myself, which is why I'm out of breath, to run for our lives. And I am now standing in a black cloud of smoke left over from the debris. There's soot. It's difficult to breathe. People ran into nearby office buildings once they got out of the danger zone just to be able to breathe. I'm on a payphone on the street right now, and I literally cannot see more than a quarter block away.
Everything just all of a sudden just imploded. I ran as fast as I could, went inside of a building about a block away. I stood in the building for a couple of seconds, and then all of a sudden the building started filling up with smoke. I was with a bunch of law enforcement officers. We couldn't get out of the building because everything was locked up. And then I came out, and everything was filled with ash, and it looks like I'm in a surreal movie.
Are you able to talk? Can we just talk to you about what happened?
I was the same one exploded.
You were right there at the building?
Yes, a lot of people trapped. You're right?
A lot of people trapped. EMT. This guy needs help. So you came down from the 77th floor.
77th floor, down the stairs.
Down the stairs.
Yes.
What was happening around you? People screaming?
No, people were pretty calm. When we got down to 6th floor, there was like another shake or another explosion. Everyone started panicking, but everybody was really calm, and the police and firemen were very helpful.
Which of the two towers were you in?
One, Trade Center 1.
All right. And when you got to the ground, then what?
It's just like, it's like rubble and dust, like inches thick, and like paper everywhere, and they just moved us out.
We look up and we see this big jet, like a 737 or a 727.
It was a 757?
About that, it was a big jet.
Yeah.
We saw it come, just looking like it's sideways. At first, we thought it was just going to try to miss it. Bang! Right into the middle of it, like around the 70th floor. And then, half hour later, we see the second one bang into it. We're on the roof of it. We're a block away. I mean...
What's going through your mind when you see this happen?
You see bodies flying out of the sky, and you can't do nothing about it. You tell me. You tell me what you think. I mean, my heart's in my mouth. I mean, I pray for these people. There's no words to describe what's going on out there.
Oh, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes. Oh,
When it comes down, we're...
all right. We do need to put it down now. I think we need to put it down now. Here we go.
It is hard to describe, folks. The pictures show what has happened in Lower Manhattan, but we don't have a handle yet on the devastation. I remind you again that there are perhaps 50,000 people who work in the World Trade Centers, the two towers, and those towers are virtually gone now after this apparent terrorist strike earlier this morning. How many of those 50,000 people they were able to get out, we don't yet know.
That is the heart of not just the financial district, but many national, international corporations. I mean, look at that smoke, the dust, that plume that has just engulfed blocks and blocks of Lower Manhattan. You have the Wall Street Journal down there, many, many corporations and offices. So I think we must say a prayer, and our heart certainly goes out to everyone who was there.
David Lee, what can you tell us?
John, just seconds ago there was a huge explosion, and it appears right now the second World Trade Tower has just collapsed. The debris and the smoke is so thick where I am that, again, you cannot see the World Trade Center, even though we're just a few blocks away. But it appears the entire building has collapsed. People are literally running through the streets. They are running from Center Street in Lower Manhattan, trying to get away from the smoke, which is absolutely choking. It is difficult to breathe. There are people in front of me wearing gas masks. The cell phone service is virtually non-existent. There are lines of people to use the few payphones that are available, and people are literally hysterical in the streets, worried about loved ones who were in these two buildings.
We are looking now at pictures, this of the second of the two World Trade Center towers collapsing after that awful, awful event. An absolutely horrific scene in Lower Manhattan, the entire lower end of the island covered in smoke and floating debris. And what's missing? The twin towers of the World Trade Center, 110 stories high. You are looking at the pictures from, the last half hour or so as the first tower simply collapsed on itself. And look at the debris raining down on other buildings. Imagine the horror. Now, here comes the second tower. This is the one that had the TV antenna on top, simply imploding on itself. 110 stories, the workplace of some 50,000 people. America, the loss of life here is going to be tremendous.
When we come back, the final moments on the timeline and a tribute to the thousands upon thousands of lives believed to be lost. We'll glimpse at the future from a long way in the past.